All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is, frankly, pretty mind-blowing, the rapidly unfolding sequence of events in the fictional 2026 Iran war. As impartial documentarians here, our goal is to take this incredibly dense, unprecedented conflict documented in our source material and make sense of it all. We're going to examine exactly how a localized crisis exploded into a massive multinational theater of war and how it happened literally in the blink of an eye. Okay, just look at how fast these initial dominoes fell. At 2038 UTC on February 27th, you have the initial authorization for military action. Less than 10 hours later, at 0635 on the 28th, massive preemptive airstrikes are already underway. And then, at 0905, which is barely 2.5 hours after the first bombs dropped, a huge multi-front retaliation has already begun. We aren't talking about a regional war building up over weeks or even days. This whole thing ignited in a matter of mere hours. So here is our roadmap for how we'll unpack all this. First, Operation Epic Fury begins. Second, Iran's regional retaliation. Third, cyber warfare and civilian impact. And finally, a widening global theater.
All right, part 1, Operation Epic Fury begins.
Late in the day, on February 27th, U.S. President Donald Trump authorized a highly coordinated immediate blitz. The whole idea was to neutralize key military infrastructure before a response could even be put together. 200. That's the number of Israeli fighter jets used in this opening assault, alongside U.S. forces. To put that scale into perspective for you, this represents the single largest combat sortie in Israel's entire history. This was absolutely not a small, targeted skirmish. It was an overwhelming display of air power right out of the gate. So what exactly were they aiming at? The focus was heavily on decapitating the military apparatus. We're talking command and control infrastructure, deeply fortified ballistic missile facilities, UAV or drone sites, and radar installations. But beyond just the physical infrastructure, the source timeline notes these initial hours included decapitation strikes that actually killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, along with several other high-ranking officials. They went straight for the very top of the command chain immediately. And to penetrate those deeply buried targets, the U.S. brought out the heavy hitters, Tomahawk missiles launched from warships, HIMARS ground launchers, and B-2 stealth bombers dropping massive 2,000-pound bombs. Meanwhile, Israel is using Black Sparrow air-launched ballistic missiles from their F-15s. But here is a really fascinating detail from the explainer. This marked Israel's first-time combat use of low-cost, one-way attack drones that were actually reverse-engineered from Iranian Shahed-style drones. It's this incredible example of asymmetric warfare being flipped right back on its originators. Which brings us to part 2, Iran's regional retaliation. Man, the response here was fast. Just hours later, starting at 9:05 UTC, Iran launched a huge counterattack across multiple fronts. 170. According to the timeline, the IDF estimated 170 ballistic missiles were fired by Iran toward Israel alone. This was a strategy of sheer volume, intended to completely saturate and overwhelm air defense systems. And it worked to some extent, with strikes hitting major population centers like Haifa and Tel Aviv almost right away. But here's the thing, they didn't just aim at Israel. The geographic footprint of this war exploded instantly. Iran targeted major U.S. military installations all across the Gulf states. We're talking Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, and the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. Within a few hours, the entire Persian Gulf region was dragged directly into the crosshairs. And it didn't stop at military bases either. The strikes spilled over into civilian and commercial hubs just as fast. Kuwait International Airport was hit, a Fairmont hotel in Dubai's residential zones was set on fire, Erbil International Airport in Iraq was targeted, along with THAAD radar defensive sites in both Jordan and Saudi Arabia. The boundaries of the battlefield just vanished, turning neighboring nations into active conflict zones practically overnight. Let's move into part 3, cyber warfare and civilian impact. So while actual missiles are flying, there's this whole invisible war happening simultaneously in the digital realm. Imagine looking at your phone and seeing this. Help has arrived. It's time for reckoning. Israel executed these highly coordinated cyber attacks, targeting Iranian infrastructure, but also everyday civilian apps. They hacked this hugely popular prayer calendar app called Bade Saba, which had over 5 million users, just to broadcast that exact push notification, urging people to defect. It is literally a modern masterclass in psychological warfare, reaching straight into the pockets of millions of regular people. Now, as we document this, we really have to look at the tragic contrast of the conflict. On paper, the intended strategic targets are clean. command centers, air bases, intelligence HQs, radar sites. But the reality on the ground? It's severe collateral damage. The timeline shows strikes hitting the Mainab Girls' School and a sports hall in Lumard in Iran, while on the other side, Iranian missiles breached defenses to hit residential neighborhoods in Tel Aviv and a synagogue in Beit Shemesh. The civilian toll was immediate, widespread, and felt on all sides. 180. That is the deeply sobering number of people reported killed in just one single strike on that girls' elementary school in Minabad. It's a harsh reminder for us that behind all the grand strategy, the data points, and the high-tech weaponry, the true reality of a rapid escalation like this is a devastating loss of civilian life. Finally, Part 4, a widening global theater. With things spiraling this quickly, international borders basically ceased to matter. The diplomatic and military reactions were immediate. Suspected drone strikes actually targeted a loyal Air Force station at Akrotiri in Cyprus. In response, the E3, that's the UK, France, and Germany, pledged proportionate defensive military support. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince authorized military force to stop further incursions, and the European Union had to scramble to expand Operation Aspides to protect commercial ships in the Red Sea. The dominoes were now falling way beyond the Middle East. And the economic fallout? Instant paralysis. 150. That is the massive bottleneck of giant freight ships and critical oil tankers that were suddenly just stalled right outside the Strait of Hormuz. Because of the sheer volume of drones and missiles filling the sky, the risk of getting caught in the crossfire was just too high. So in literally a single day, one of the most massive arteries of global trade was completely choked off. The big takeaway from this source text here is the absolute sheer chaos of a multi-nation theater. It wasn't just organized military strikes anymore. Falling interception debris and localized drone attacks became a daily, unpredictable reality everywhere from Cyprus to the UAE. For instance, an Amazon Web Services data center in the UAE got hit, which caused a massive power cut and connectivity outage. Civilian infrastructure across multiple countries was suddenly dealing with the very real, very unpredictable fallout of a sky full of weapons. So that leaves us with one incredibly chilling question. As we've seen unpacking this explainer today, the speed of modern warfare is what's truly terrifying. That domino effect from a single authorization to a sprawling, multi-nation, multi-domain conflict, it took just hours. So if a regional war can escalate this rapidly, pulling in superpowers, hacking global cyber networks, and freezing world trade almost instantly, how long until a localized conflict becomes a truly global one? It's a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning and keep learning.